Hello everyone, welcome to the YouTube channel James Tech School. In this episode of Windows Server 2025 Knowledge Sharing, we will learn about the very important Active Directory in enterprise networks, also known as AD domain services. In this video, I will guide you step by step from scratch, covering how to set up DC1 and DC2 domain controllers, drawing client computers to the domain, manage organizational units and domain users, as well as the basics of group policy. I will also demonstrate how to remove domain controllers and restore a standard server environment. These topics are fundamental for further learning in enterprise network management, domain environment deployment, and IT operations. If you are interested in Windows Server network management or enterprise IT operations, feel free to subscribe to the channel and give a like for support. Let's get started. If there are 20 client computers in the same local area network, each client computer operates in workgroup by default, and the network configuration is very simple with almost no management required, which is suitable for small network environments. In a small network environment, user accounts, file sharing, and group policies are managed in a decentralized way. As the number of client computers in the local area network increases to hundreds of client computers, it will significantly increase the workload for IT staff. To solve this problem, Windows Server 2025 needs to install Active Directory services to centrally manage all client computers in the local area network. When client computers join the domain, they will no longer log in with local computer user accounts, but will log in with domain users. The content of this video includes installing DC1 and DC2 controllers, setting up client computers, managing organizational units and domain users, configuring group policy, and removing domain controllers. Before starting the demonstrations, please note that VMware Workstation Pro is set to host-only mode, allowing Windows Server 2025 and Windows 11 to operate on the same network. Windows Server 2025 requires two virtual machines, one for DC1 and one for DC2, with IP addresses 192.168.0.1 and 192.168.0.2, respectively. Windows 11 also requires two virtual machines, Client 1 and Client 2, with IP addresses 192.168.0.10 and 192.168.0.11. Users need to manually create the accounts Tom and Peter in advance. Also, make sure ICMP echo requests are enabled on both Windows Server 2025 virtual machines. Finally, do not clone virtual machines directly, as identical SIDs may prevent domain joining. Instead, create new virtual machines and install the system separately. These basic steps are covered in previous tutorials and will not be demonstrated in this video. Creating DC1 controller is divided into 4 steps. The first step is to change the computer name. The second step is to modify the DNS address. The third step is to install Active Directory services. And the fourth step is to promote it to a domain controller. Step 1. Change the computer name. Switch to the desktop of the first Windows Server 2025 virtual machine. Move the mouse to this PC. Right-click and click Properties. Click Rename this PC. Enter the name DC1 and click Next. At this point, it will prompt whether to restart the computer. Click Restart Now. Click Continue and ignore the reason for shutting down this computer. After restarting the computer, log into the account and proceed to the next step. Step 2. Modify the DNS address. Go to Control Panel. Click Network and Internet. Click Network and Sharing Center. And click Change Adapter Settings. Move the mouse to Ethernet 0. Right-click. Click Properties. Click Internet Protocol version 4. And click Properties. If there is no separate DNS server in the local area network, the DNS address needs to be consistent with the static IP address. Enter 192.168.0.1. Click OK. Click Close and exit the settings page. Step 3. Install Active Directory services. In Server Manager, click Add Roles and Features. Click Next. And keep the default selection role-based or feature-based installation. Then click Next. Select a server from the server pool. The modified computer name DC1 is shown below. Click Next. Select Active Directory Domain Services. Click Add Features. Click Next. Click Next. Click Next. Click Install until the feature installation is complete. Do not click Close at this time to observe the installation progress. After installation is completed, click Close. Step 4. Promote to a domain controller. Click Notifications. Click Promote this server to a domain controller. Since this is the first deployment, select Add a new forest. The root domain name can be customized, but it must be remembered. For example, enter an easy-to-remember domain name training.server2025.com. Click Next. For forest functional level and domain functional level, if there is no older version than Windows Server 2025 in the local area network, keep the default settings. If there is, select an older version such as Windows Server 2016. Set an easy-to-remember password. And click Next. Ignore DNS delegation and click Next. The NetBIOS domain name is automatically generated and must be remembered. Click Next. Keep the storage path unchanged. Click Next. This step is to confirm the information. If there is no problem, continue to click Next. For prerequisite check, ignore DNS delegation. Click Install until the installation is complete and the system restarts. After restarting, log in with the format training /administrator. Enter the password and log in. In Server Manager, click Tools. Click Active Directory Users and Computers. At this time, you can see the created domain training.server2025.com. Expand this domain. Click Users. And the previously manually created Tom and Peter are upgraded to domain users. After creating DC1 Controller, the next step is to create DC2 Controller. Why create DC2 Controller? When DC1 Controller fails, DC2 Controller can replace the work of DC1 Controller. The domain user information created on DC1 Controller will be automatically synchronized to DC2 Controller, and the role of DC2 Controller is a mirror server. Creating DC2 Controller is divided into 4 steps. The first step is to change the computer name. The second step is to modify the DNS address. The third step is to install Active Directory services. And the fourth step is to promote it to a domain controller. Switch to the desktop of the second Windows Server 2025 virtual machine. The entire operation process is the same as creating DC1 Controller, and the DNS address is the same as DC1 Controller. For deployment, select Add a domain controller to an existing domain instead of selecting Add a new forest. When joining the existing domain, enter the user account information of DC1 Controller. The username format should be training.server2025.com/administrator. Make sure to enter the full domain name to avoid errors that the domain cannot be found. The following will demonstrate the entire process. The video is relatively long and will be sped up. After completing the creation of DC1 Controller and DC2 Controller, Windows 11 is used as the client, and the operation is divided into two steps. The first step is to set the DNS address, and the second step is to change the computer name and join the domain. The DNS addresses of both Windows 11 virtual machines are set to DC1 Controller. The following demonstrates setting up Client 1 and Client 2. The video will not be very long. After setting up Client 1 and Client 2, switch to DC1 Controller. In Server Manager, click Tools. Click Active Directory Users and Computers. Click the domain name training.server2025.com. Click Computers. And at this point, you can see the newly joined Client 1 and Client 2. After configuring DC1 controller and DC2 controller in the local area network, no matter which DC controller you switch to, whether it is newly created users or group policy settings, DC1 and DC2 will synchronize with each other. Next, there are two tasks to complete. The first step is to create organizational units, which are sales and marketing respectively. The second step is to move user Tom and Client 1 to sales, and move Peter and Client 2 to marketing. For later group policy management, it is not recommended to create group. After creating group, it is difficult to link GPO to group. After any client computer logs in with a domain user, the group policy cannot be applied to the user. The following will demonstrate the process. The video will not be very long. Group policy management is used together after installing Active Directory domain services. What can it do in simple terms? For example, DC Controller can use group policy management to restrict client computers from using some common Windows system functions. Since group policy management contains many settings, it can be adjusted according to actual needs, and not too much content will be demonstrated here. The following demonstrates that the organizational unit cell is restricted from using command prompt, and the organizational unit marketing is restricted from using registry editor. The video is very long. Please watch patiently. Due to the reduction in the number of computers in the local area network, the management difficulty is reduced, so it is necessary to perform remove roles and features. For the server, this reduces a lot of workload and it needs to be restored to a normal server. Switch to DC1 Controller. In Server Manager, click Manage. Click Remove Roles and Features. Click Next. Keep the default domain name unchanged. Click Next. Uncheck Active Directory Domain Services. Click Remove Features. Click Demote this domain controller. Select for the removal of this domain controller. Click Next. Select Proceed with Removal. Click Next. Enter the administrator password. Click Next. Click Demote until it is completed. After restarting, enter the local administrator password and repeat the previous step. In Server Manager, click Manage. Click Remove Roles and Features. Click Next. Keep the default domain name unchanged. Click Next. Uncheck Active Directory Domain Services. Click Remove Features. Uncheck DNS Server. Click Remove Features. Click Next. Keep the default settings unchanged. Click Next. This step is to confirm the removal information. Click Remove until it is completed. Then click Close. After restarting again, log in with a local administrator account until you no longer see any content related to Active Directory domain services. The operation method for DC2 Controller is the same as DC1 Controller and will not be demonstrated again here. That's all for this episode of Windows Server 2025 knowledge sharing. I hope it was helpful to you. If you enjoy this kind of technical tutorial, remember to subscribe to the channel James Tech School and feel free to give a like to support. If there are any topics you'd like to learn, you can leave a comment below. See you in the next video.